The construction crew's shocked gasps pierced the morning air as they uncovered what lay beneath the concrete. Karen's face went white as she realized her months of sabotage had led to this moment, trapped between two properties, her own fence becoming her prison, while the very pool she'd tried to destroy held the evidence that would expose every lie she'd told. The irony was beautiful. The woman who'd spent 6 months trying to ruin her neighbor's life was about to discover that karma had been waiting patiently. The sledgehammer struck concrete with a thunderous crack that echoed across the suburban neighborhood like a gunshot. Sarah Martinez wiped sweat from her brow as she surveyed the destruction. Her once pristine backyard now resembled a war zone, with chunks of broken pool deck scattered like ancient ruins across the torn earth. We've got a problem," called Miguel, the crew foreman, his voice carrying an edge of concern that made Sarah's stomach clench. He was pointing toward the property line, where a section of freshly demolished concrete had revealed something unexpected beneath. Sarah picked her way through the debris, her work boots crunching on fragments of what had once been her dream pool. The morning sun cast long shadows across the destruction, making the scene feel even more surreal. 6 months ago, this had been her sanctuary, a beautiful in-ground pool surrounded by professionally landscaped gardens, the centerpiece of weekend barbecues and summer relaxation. Now it was gone, and all because of her. What kind of problem? Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer would somehow involve her neighbor. Miguel crouched beside a jagged hole in the concrete, his weathered hands brushing away debris. "Someone's been messing with your utilities. Look at this." He pointed to a section of PVC pipe that had been deliberately cut, the edges too clean to be accidental damage. "And this electrical conduit here? Same thing. Someone knew exactly where to cut to cause maximum damage." Sarah's jaw tightened as she examined the sabotage. The cuts were precise, methodical, the work of someone with access to the property plans and enough time to execute their vandalism carefully. There was only one person who fit that description. "How long would this have taken?" she asked. "Hours. Maybe multiple nights. Whoever did this had to dig down through the deck, make the cuts, then patch everything back up so it wouldn't show." Miguel shook his head in disgust. "Professional job, but evil as hell." A movement caught Sarah's eye, and she looked up to see Karen Whitmore standing at her kitchen window, coffee cup in hand, watching the demolition with barely concealed satisfaction. Even from 50 feet away, Sarah could see the smug expression on her neighbor's face, the same expression she'd worn during 6 months of escalating warfare. "That bitch," Sarah muttered under her breath. Miguel asked. "Nothing. Just to keep working. Document everything you find." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at the screen and felt her blood pressure spike. "Such a shame about your pool. I guess some projects just aren't meant to be. Maybe now you'll have learned your lesson about being a considerate neighbor." The message had come from an unknown number, but Sarah knew exactly who'd sent it. Karen had been playing this game for months, anonymous complaints to the Homeowners Association, mysterious utility outages, small acts of sabotage that could never quite be proven. But this was different. This was destruction of property. And Sarah finally had evidence. She screenshot the message and forwarded it to her lawyer with a note, "She's escalating. This is harassment. Mrs. Martinez." Miguel called out again, his voice more urgent now. "You need to see this." Sarah hurried over to where he was standing near the fence line. The demolition had revealed something that made her heart race with a mixture of rage and vindication. Buried beneath the concrete was a sophisticated network of monitoring equipment, cameras, motion sensors, even what appeared to be some kind of listening device. "Jesus Christ," Sarah whispered. "She's been spying on me." The equipment was professional grade, expensive. Cables ran from the devices toward the property line, disappearing beneath the fence that separated Sarah's yard from Karen's. The implications were staggering. Not only had Karen been sabotaging the pool, she'd been conducting surveillance on Sarah and her family for months. "This is federal crime territory," Miguel said grimly. "You need to call the police." Before Sarah could respond, she heard the distinctive sound of Karen's back door slamming shut. Through the gaps in the fence, she could see her neighbor rushing across her yard, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "She's calling someone," Sarah said. Probably her lawyer. Or trying to destroy evidence, Miguel suggested. If I were you, I'd. His words were cut off by a sharp crack from the fence line. One of the wooden posts that separated the properties had apparently been weakened by the demolition vibrations. As they watched, the 8-foot privacy fence began to sway ominously. Everyone back! Miguel shouted to his crew. That fence is coming down. The workers scattered as the fence post groaned under the strain. But instead of falling into Sarah's yard as expected, the entire section tilted toward Karen's property. Sarah watched in fascination as 20 feet of fencing crashed down, taking with it a section of Karen's prized rose garden. The destruction revealed something that made Sarah's day, and potentially her entire legal case. Karen's backyard was a mess of surveillance equipment, stacks of Sarah's mail, and what appeared to be a detailed map of Sarah's property with notes marking utility lines, structural weak points, and optimal sabotage locations. But most damning of all was a large storage shed that had been hidden behind the fence, its door hanging open to reveal months' worth of stolen packages, garden tools, and other items that had mysteriously disappeared from Sarah's property. Holy shit, breathed Miguel. She's been running a one-woman crime spree. Karen appeared at her back door, her face a mask of panic as she surveyed the exposed evidence of her obsession. For a moment, the two women stared at each other across the fallen fence, the weight of 6 months of escalating conflict hanging between them like a loaded gun. You did this on purpose? Karen shrieked, her composure finally cracking. You brought down my fence to frame me. I didn't touch your fence, Karen, Sarah replied calmly, pulling out her phone to document the scene. But I'm certainly going to document what was hiding behind it. Karen's eyes widened as she realized the implications. She turned to run back into her house, but in her panic, she tripped over a section of the fallen fence. As she fell, her foot caught in the chain-link section that had been attached to the wooden posts, effectively trapping her ankle in a twisted mess of metal and wood. Help me, she screamed, struggling against the debris. I'm stuck. Sarah looked down at her neighbor, the woman who had made her life hell for 6 months, who had destroyed her pool, invaded her privacy, and stolen her property, now trapped in her own fence like a rat in a cage. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted. Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up one of the scattered photos, a close-up shot of her daughter Emma sleeping in her bed, taken from inside the room. The timestamp showed it was taken just last week, during a night when Sarah's husband David was traveling for work. Officer Jenkins, Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. You need to see this. Jenkins took the photo and his expression hardened immediately. Jesus Christ. This is felony stalking. Breaking and entering. If this was a minor. He looked at Sarah with grim understanding. How old is your daughter? 14, Sarah replied, feeling sick. Then we are looking at potential charges involving a minor. This just became a federal case. Karen, still trapped in the fence but now immobilized by a medical brace, had gone completely silent. Her face was pale, whether from pain or the realization of the legal catastrophe she was facing, Sarah couldn't tell. There's more, Miguel called out from Karen's shed. He emerged holding a leather-bound journal. You're not going to believe this. Sarah's phone rang before she could process Miguel's discovery. The caller ID showed her home security company. Mrs. Martinez, we've reviewed your footage from the past 3 months. You're going to want to see this, but I have to warn you, it's disturbing. How disturbing? Sarah asked, though she was afraid she already knew. We've identified 17 separate and authorized entries into your home. The subject appears to be your neighbor. She had detailed knowledge of your family's schedules and she was doing more than just looking around. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. What do you mean? She was moving things, taking photos, and the security agent paused. She was touching your family's personal belongings. Clothes, bedding, personal items. There's also footage of her in your daughter's room multiple times. Sarah's legs gave out. She sank onto a piece of broken concrete, the phone slipping from her numb fingers. Officer Jenkins picked it up and identified himself to the security company. This is Officer Jenkins, badge 4472. I need all that footage preserved as evidence immediately. We are dealing with a federal stalking case involving a minor. While Jenkins handled the security company, Sarah found herself staring at Karen with a mixture of horror and disgust. This wasn't just neighborhood harassment, this was the behavior of someone who was completely unhinged. Why? Sarah asked quietly. Why my family? Karen's response was barely audible. You had everything I wanted. So you decided to destroy it. I decided to understand it, Karen whispered. To see how you lived, how you could be so happy. All the time. Miguel approached with the journal still in his hands. I think you need to read this. It's like a diary, but... He shook his head. It's about your family. Daily entries going back almost a year. Sarah took the journal with shaking hands and opened it to a random page. The neat handwriting was immediately recognizable as Karen's, but the content made her stomach turn. March 15th, Sarah wore the blue dress again today. The one that makes her look confident. I tried it on when I was in her closet yesterday. It doesn't fit me the same way. Nothing does. Emma got home from school at 3:47 p.m. She went straight to her room and did homework. Such a good girl. Not like the children in my old neighborhood who were always screaming and making noise. I wonder if she knows how lucky she is to have a mother who actually cares about her. Sarah flipped to another page, her hands shaking harder with each word. April 3rd, David left for another business trip today. Sarah seemed sad at breakfast. She made pancakes in the shape of hearts for Emma. Even though she was clearly upset. I would have made better pancakes. I would have been a better wife. I stayed in their house until 11 p.m., just sitting in their living room, trying to understand what makes their life so perfect. I fell asleep on their couch. It was the best sleep I've had in months. She was living in our house, Sarah whispered. She was pretending to be part of our family. Officer Jenkins finished his call and returned to Sarah's side. I need to ask you some difficult questions. Have you or your family members noticed any items missing? Any signs that someone had been in your home? Sarah's mind raced through the past months. Food. We kept running out of food faster than we should. And Emma mentioned that some of her clothes were out of place. I thought she was just being messy. What about personal items? Anything that might have a sentimental value? Sarah's heart stopped. My jewelry box. There's a necklace, my grandmother's necklace. It's been missing for 2 months. I thought I'd misplaced it. Karen's sharp intake of breath confirmed Sarah's worst fears. You stole my grandmother's necklace, Sarah said, her voice rising. You've been wearing my dead grandmother's jewelry. I was keeping it safe, Karen said desperately. It was just sitting in your jewelry box, never worn. I appreciated it more than you did. You sick, twisted, please step back. Officer Jenkins intervened. Let us handle this. But Sarah was beyond listening. She grabbed the journal from Miguel's hands and began reading random entries aloud, her voice growing stronger with each revelation. April 20th, Emma had a nightmare last night. I heard her crying from outside her window. I wanted to go in and comfort her, but Sarah got there first. She held her and sang that stupid lullaby. The same one she sings every night. I know because I listen from the guest room closet. Sarah's voice broke. You were in my daughter's room while she was sleeping. You watched me comfort my own child. I was protecting her, Karen insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. From what? From the world. From disappointment. From becoming like everyone else who doesn't appreciate what they have. Sarah flipped to a more recent entry, her hands shaking with rage. June 10th, Sarah looked beautiful today in her yellow sundress. She was gardening, humming to herself. So peaceful. So content. I hate her. I hate how easy everything is for her. I hate how she never has to try to be happy. I want to take it all away from her, piece by piece, until she understands what it's like to lose everything that matters. The journal slipped from Sarah's hands and fell to the ground. The full scope of Karen's obsession was laid bare in hundreds of pages of meticulous documentation. This wasn't just stalking, it was a comprehensive plan to destroy Sarah's life. From the inside out. "There's more," Miguel said quietly. He'd been continuing to search through the scattered evidence while Sarah read. "Look at this." He held up a manila folder labeled Phase TWO in Karen's neat handwriting. Inside were detailed plans for escalating the harassment. Maps showing the best routes to follow Emma to school. Photos of David's office building with notes about his work schedule. Even a floor plan of Emma's school with her locker location marked. She was planning to go after Emma at school, Sarah whispered. Officer Jenkins immediately got on his radio. "I need backup units at Jefferson Middle School immediately. We have a potential threat to a minor student." As more police cars arrived, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. Among the scattered papers was a prescription bottle, antidepressants prescribed to Karen, but the bottle was full. She hadn't been taking her medication. "Karen," Sarah said quietly. "How long have you been off your medication?" "I don't need pills," Karen muttered. "I need what you have." "And what is that?" "A life worth living." The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah realized that Karen's obsession wasn't just about envy, it was about a complete break from reality. Karen had convinced herself that if she could just take Sarah's life, she would finally be happy. One of the new officers called out from Karen's backyard. "We found something else." Sarah looked over to see the officer holding up a small device, a GPS tracker. "This was attached to your daughter's backpack," he continued. "And there's another one on your car." Sarah felt the world tilt around her. Karen hadn't just been watching them, she'd been tracking their every movement for months. "How long?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. "Based on the serial numbers." "At least 6 months." 6 months. Karen had been living a shadow version of Sarah's life for half a year, documenting every moment, planning every move, building towards something that Sarah was only now beginning to understand. "Officer Jenkins," Sarah said, forcing herself to stay calm. "I need to know, what was she planning to do with all this information?" Before Jenkins could answer, Karen spoke up from her position on the stretcher. Her voice was different now, calmer, more lucid, as if the pain medication had cleared her head. "I was going to become you," she said simply. "Replace you. Take your life, your family, your happiness. And you would have deserved it, because you never appreciated what you had." The paramedics were loading Karen into the ambulance now, but her eyes never left Sarah's face. "This isn't over," Karen said as the ambulance doors closed. "You can't protect them forever." As the ambulance drove away, Sarah realized that arresting Karen was just the beginning. The real question was, what else had Karen set in motion? What other plans were still out there, waiting to be discovered? Sarah stood frozen for a moment, watching Karen thrash against the twisted metal like a wild animal caught in a snare. The woman's designer yoga pants were torn, her perfectly styled blonde hair was disheveled, and panic had transformed her usually composed face into a mask of desperation. "Sarah. Please." Karen's voice cracked with genuine fear. "I think my ankle is broken." The construction crew had gathered around the property line, their faces a mixture of concern and barely concealed amusement. Miguel stepped forward, his professional instincts overriding the drama. "We should call 911, he said quietly to Sarah. "Whatever she's done, we can't just leave her trapped." Sarah nodded, but before she could reach for her phone, Karen's voice cut through the morning air with renewed venom. "Don't you dare call anyone. This is entrapment. You deliberately caused this fence to fall." "Oh, what?" Sarah's sympathy evaporated instantly. "Karen, your fence fell because you've been undermining my property for months. Look around you, the evidence is literally scattered across your yard." From her trapped position, Karen's eyes darted frantically around her exposed backyard. The fallen fence had created a perfect viewing window into what she'd been hiding. Stacks of surveillance photos showing Sarah's daily routines were pinned to a bulletin board mounted on her shed. A laptop sat open on a garden table, its screen displaying what appeared to be a detailed schedule of Sarah's family's comings and goings. That's not what it looks like," Karen stammered. "Really?" Sarah pulled out her phone and began recording. "Because it looks like you've been stalking my family for months. These photos of my daughter getting off the school bus. My husband leaving for work. What exactly were you planning, Karen?" Miguel approached the fence line cautiously. "I need to get you free before that metal cuts off circulation to your foot. But I have to tell you, this evidence needs to be preserved. I'm calling the police." "No." Karen's voice rose to a near shriek. "You don't understand. She's been harassing me. The pool noise, the construction, the parties, she's been deliberately trying to drive down my property value." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Karen, you complained about my pool filter running. The thing was silent. You called the police because my 10-year-old daughter was playing Marco Polo at 3 in the afternoon. On a Saturday. Children should be seen and not heard," Karen snapped, then immediately seemed to realize how that sounded. You mean you're a psychopath," Sarah finished. "Miguel, make that call." As Miguel dialed 911, Sarah continued documenting the scene. Among the scattered surveillance equipment, she spotted something that made her blood run cold: a detailed floor plan of her house, complete with bedroom locations and what appeared to be notes about the family's sleep schedules. "Karen," Sarah's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Were you planning to break into my house?" "I would never." Karen's protest was cut off by a sharp yelp of pain as she tried to shift position. The fence had her leg trapped at an awkward angle, and every movement seemed to tighten the metal grip. "Because these notes here," Sarah continued, holding up a piece of paper that had blown against the fence, "they show that you know exactly when my husband travels for work, when my daughter has sleepovers, when I'm alone in the house." Karen's face went pale. "You're taking that out of context." "Am I?" "Because there's a context where mapping out when a family is most vulnerable is innocent. I was documenting the noise violations. The times when you were being disruptive." Sarah's phone buzzed with another message. She glanced at the screen and felt her heart stop. "Mom, someone broke into my locker at school and stole my house key. Should I tell the principal?" Emma, the message was from her daughter, sent 20 minutes ago. Sarah's hands began to shake as she looked back at Karen, who was now watching her with an expression that was almost hungry. "You have my daughter's key," Sarah said. It wasn't a question. Karen's silence was answer enough. "You've been inside my house." "I don't know what you're talking about," Karen whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Sarah's mind raced through the past few months. The subtle changes she'd noticed but dismissed: books moved slightly on shelves, food containers that seemed less full than they should be, the feeling of being watched even when she was alone in her own home. "You sick freak," Sarah breathed. "You've been coming into my house when we are not home." "Prove it," Karen snarled, some of her defiance returning despite her trapped position. Sarah didn't need to prove it. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd programmed months ago but never used: her home security company. "This is Sarah Martinez, account number 47291. I need to review my security footage from the past 3 months." "Yes, I'll hold." Karen's face went white. "You don't have cameras?" "I've had them for 4 months, Karen." "Hidden ones?" "I installed them after the 3rd time I came home to find things moved around." Sarah's voice was deadly calm. "I thought I was paranoid. Turns out I wasn't paranoid enough." The emergency sirens were getting closer now. Sarah could hear them approaching through the suburban streets, but she was focused entirely on the woman trapped in the fence. Karen was no longer struggling against the metal. She was perfectly still, staring at Sarah with an expression of pure hatred. "You ruined everything," Karen whispered. "This was a perfect neighborhood before you moved in. Quiet. Peaceful. Then you came with your loud family and your parties and your happiness." "My happiness?" Sarah repeated, incredulous. "Do you have any idea what it's like to watch someone else live the life you deserved? To see your perfect family, your Perfect marriage, your perfect house, every single day. The mask was finally off. Sarah could see the depth of Karen's obsession, the twisted reasoning that had justified months of escalating crimes. This wasn't about property values or noise complaints. This was about a woman who had become so consumed with envy that she'd turned into a stalker. Karen, Sarah said quietly, you need help. I don't need anything from you, Karen spat. And this isn't over. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? I know where you live. I know your routines. I know your daughter's school schedule. The threat was clear, and Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Even trapped and exposed, Karen was still dangerous. Maybe more dangerous now that she had nothing left to lose. The first police car pulled up to the curb, followed immediately by an ambulance. Sarah watched the paramedics jump out and begin assessing the situation, but her mind was already racing ahead to the implications of what she'd discovered. Officer Jenkins, whom Sarah recognized from previous calls about Karen's harassment, approached the fence line with a grim expression. Mrs. Martinez, what exactly happened here? Sarah gestured to the scattered evidence. We were demolishing my pool and found surveillance equipment buried in the concrete. When the fence fell, we discovered all of this. Jenkins surveyed the scene, the photos, the equipment, the detailed maps and schedules. His expression grew darker with each revelation. He said to Karen, I'm going to read you your rights as soon as we get you freed from this fence. This is harassment. Karen screamed. She's framing me. She destroyed my property. I can see the surveillance photos from here. Jenkins replied dryly. That's not something you can frame someone for. As the paramedics worked to free Karen's trapped leg, Sarah noticed something that made her smile grimly. In Karen's frantic struggles, she'd managed to tear open a garbage bag that had been hidden behind the shed. The contents were now scattered across the grass, dozens of open packages, all addressed to Sarah and her family. Officer Jenkins, Sarah called out, pointing to the evidence. You might want to add mail theft to whatever charges you're filing. Karen's struggles against the fence became more desperate as she realized the scope of evidence surrounding her. But her thrashing only seemed to tighten the metal grip on her ankle. The paramedics were forced to use heavy-duty cutters to slowly work through the twisted chain link. Almost there, the lead paramedic said. Just hold still. But Karen couldn't hold still. The approaching consequences of her actions had sent her into a full panic. She twisted violently against the fence, trying to pull her leg free. Through sheer force. There was a sickening crack, followed by Karen's scream of agony. I think she just broke her ankle, the paramedic said grimly. We need to immobilize this immediately. As they worked to stabilize Karen's self-inflicted injury, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. Among the scattered surveillance photos was a series taken inside her house, her bedroom, her daughter's room, even the bathroom. Karen hadn't just been stalking them from outside. She'd been living in their home like a ghost, documenting their most private moments. The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. This woman hadn't just been harassing them, she'd been planning something far worse. Sarah's phone rang at 6:47 a.m., jolting her from the first real sleep she'd managed in 3 days. The caller ID showed Detective Morrison, the federal agent who'd taken over Karen's case. Mrs. Martinez, we need you to come to the station immediately. We've uncovered something that changes everything. Sarah's heart sank. She'd been hoping that Karen's arrest would be the end of it, but the detective's tone suggested they were just scratching the surface. What kind of something? Sarah asked, already reaching for her clothes. The kind that suggests your neighbor wasn't working alone. An hour later, Sarah sat in an interrogation room staring at a wall covered with photos, documents, and what looked like a conspiracy board worthy of a crime thriller. Detective Morrison, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, spread additional evidence. Across the table. We executed a search warrant on Karen Whitmore's house yesterday, Morrison began. What we found suggests she's been part of a larger operation. Have you ever heard of something called lifestyle acquisition networks? Sarah shook her head. It's a relatively new phenomenon. Groups of people who become obsessed with specific families or individuals and work together to infiltrate their lives. They share information, resources, and sometimes even rotate surveillance duties. Morrison pulled out a laptop and turned it toward Sarah. The screen showed a private forum with dozens of posts, all focused on Sarah's family. This forum has been active for 8 months, Morrison continued. Karen was the primary poster, but she had help from at least 6 other people. Look at these usernames: Perfect Life Watcher, Suburban Stalker, Dream Life Thief. They've been coordinating surveillance on your family across multiple states. Sarah's hands went cold. Multiple states. Your husband travels for work, right? Look at this post from 3 months ago. Morrison pointed to a message thread. Target's husband arriving in Chicago. Hotel confirmed. Usual routine observed. Opportunity window 6 to 8 p.m. Someone was watching David in Chicago. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Chicago, Denver, Atlanta, Phoenix. Wherever his work took him, someone was there documenting his activities. They have photos of him at restaurants, in hotel lobbies, even in his hotel room. Sarah felt sick. How is that possible? Hotel employees, restaurant workers, even some business contacts. This network has been recruiting people with access to your family's daily routines. They pay for information, photos, personal items. Morrison pulled out another folder. This is where it gets worse. 3 days ago, someone posted a detailed plan for what they called a Phase 3 of the operation. Karen's arrest was always part of the plan. What do you mean? They wanted her to get caught. The arrest, the media attention, the restraining order, it was all designed to make you feel safe while the real operation continued. Sarah's mind reeled. Real operation. They call it the replacement. The goal was never just to harass you, it was to systematically replace every aspect of your life with members of their network. Look at this post from last week. Morrison showed Sarah a message that made her blood freeze. Phase 3 begins when our inside operative is removed. New identity documents are ready. School enrollment paperwork completed. Target's daughter will never know the difference. They were planning to take Emma, Sarah whispered. Not just take her. Replace her. Look at this. Morrison pulled out a series of photographs showing a young girl who looked remarkably similar to Emma, same height, same hair color, even similar facial features. This is Jessica Hartwell. She's been living in a group home in Nevada for 6 months, being prepared for this operation. They've been showing her photos of your family, teaching her your routines, even having her practice Emma's handwriting. Sarah's world tilted. You're saying they found a girl who looks like my daughter and trained her to impersonate her? That's exactly what I'm saying. And according to the forum posts, the switch was supposed to happen this week. During the chaos of Karen's arrest, when you were distracted and vulnerable. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her husband, flight delayed. Won't be home until tonight. Emma's staying at Sarah's house for dinner. Love you. Sarah stared at the message, her mind racing. Detective, what's my daughter's best friend's name? Morrison consulted her notes. According to our interviews, Emma's best friend is Michelle Torres. This text says she's staying at Sarah's house. But Emma's best friend is Michelle. There is no Sarah. Morrison's expression went grim. When did you last speak to Emma directly? This morning before school. She seemed different. Quieter. I thought she was just tired. We need to get to the school. Now. The drive to Jefferson Middle School felt like an eternity. Sarah's mind conjured increasingly horrific scenarios as Detective Morrison radioed for backup units. When they arrived, the principal was waiting at the front entrance with a worried expression. Mrs. Martinez, I'm so glad you're here. Emma left school early today. She said you'd called and that there was a family emergency. Sarah's knees nearly buckled. I didn't call. I never called. The woman on the phone knew all the right information, your emergency contact code, Emma's schedule, even details about your family situation. She said Emma's aunt was picking her up. Emma doesn't have an aunt, Sarah said flatly. Principal Rodriguez went pale. Oh my God. We need to check the security footage immediately. In the school's security office, Sarah watched helplessly as the cameras showed Emma walking out of the building with a woman who looked exactly like Karen, same height, same build, same blonde hair. But Karen was in federal custody. That's not Karen, Morrison said grimly. That's someone else from the network. Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. Answer it, Morrison instructed. But don't let them know we're here. Sarah's hands shook as she answered. Hello. Sarah, honey, it's me. The voice was Emma's, but something was wrong. The tone was too formal, too careful. Emma. Where are you? The school said, I'm fine, Mom. I'm with Aunt Linda. She picked me up for that appointment we talked about. Sarah's heart hammered. They'd never talked about any appointment, and Emma had never called her Mom in that stilted way. Emma. What's Aunt Linda's last name? Sarah asked carefully. There was a pause. Smith. Aunt Linda Smith. And where are you going? To the dentist. For my cleaning. Sarah looked at Morrison, who was already coordinating with other officers. Emma's answers were clearly rehearsed, and the girl was obviously in distress. Emma, can you tell me what color your bedroom walls are? Another pause. Blue. They are blue, Mom. Emma's walls were purple. Had been purple for 3 years. Okay, honey. I love you. I love you too, Mom. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, the reality of the situation hitting her like a physical blow. That wasn't Emma, she whispered. No, Morrison agreed. That was Jessica Hartwell. Which means Emma is somewhere else entirely. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from the same unknown number, your daughter is safe. For now. But if you want to see her again, you'll need to make some choices. Check your email. Sarah's hands shook as she opened her email. The message was from an account she didn't recognize, but the subject line made her blood freeze, the replacement contract. Sarah Martinez, by now you understand that your old life is over. Your daughter is in our care. Being prepared for her new family. She will be happy with us, happier than she ever was with you. You have 2 choices. 1, cooperate with the transition. Allow the replacement to continue. Jessica will return to your home as Emma, and you will accept her as your daughter. In exchange, your real daughter will be placed with a loving family who will appreciate her properly. 2, resist and face the consequences. Emma will disappear permanently, and you will spend the rest of your life knowing that your selfishness cost your daughter her life. You have 6 hours to decide. Come alone to the address below at midnight. Bring no police, no weapons, no recording devices. Just your answer. Remember, we know where you live. We know where your husband works. We know every detail of your life. You cannot hide from us, and you cannot protect everyone you love. Choose wisely. The network. Sarah stared at the email, her mind struggling to process the impossible choice being forced upon her. These people had orchestrated everything: Karen's arrest, the distraction of the pool demolition, even the timing of David's business trip. They had been planning this moment for months. Detective, Sarah said quietly, they want me to choose between my daughter and some stranger they've trained to replace her. Morrison read the email over Sarah's shoulder. This is a federal kidnapping case now. We are going to get Emma back. But what if they are telling the truth? What if trying to rescue her gets her killed? Sarah, look at me. Morrison's voice was firm. These people are not going to honor any agreement. They are criminals who have committed multiple federal crimes. If you cooperate, you'll lose Emma anyway, and they'll just have more leverage over you. Sarah knew the detective was right, but the maternal instinct to protect her daughter at any cost was overwhelming. She looked at the address in the email, a warehouse district on the outskirts of town. What's our plan? She asked. Morrison was already on her radio. We are going to flood that location with agents. But first, we need to figure out where they're actually holding Emma. Because I guarantee you, she's not going to be at